Welcome everyone. Big City Lit writing welcome to you all. Really happy to make this happen. As I was just saying, we've had so many interruptions from various things, and this is an event that people have really enjoyed in the past, so we're really keen to keep it going. I'm Phyllis Richardson. I am a coordinator in the writing team at City Lit, so I help to organize the creative writing courses. And I'm going to let you listen to that siren. I'm going to hand you over to the capable hands of Brian Mullen, who's going to guide us through the evening. And then he's going to have a really nice chat with Dawn King, who's going to tell us some wonderful things about playwriting. So thanks everybody for being here, and thank you, Brian and Dawn, and over to you.
Thank you, Phyllis. You've just explained what I was about to explain, so my job is partially done. Welcome everybody to Late Lines. As some people are already doing in the chat, they're giving a wave and a hello and telling where they're calling in from. So please, if you haven't done that yet, it's nice to say hi in the chat and let us know where you are. Nottingham, West Sussex, this is brilliant. Just give a hello to everybody so that we know you're out there. And I think Julie wins the prize so far for being the greatest distance away in France. That's wonderful. So everyone, the way we're going to do this is there are some brilliant, about 12 brave people who have submitted work in advance, which they're going to read for us. We'll have about half the group read in the first part of the event. We'll take a short comfort break. And when we come back from that, our headliner guest is Dawn King. Dawn teaches on the playwriting team with me. So we each teach different playwriting classes. So Dawn and I will be having a chat about the craft of playwriting and Dawn's work in particular. And then we'll have 6 more readers after that. So hopefully it should be quite enjoyable for everybody. I would say, once we've heard from the different writers who've read anything, if you want to give them a big cheer or any lovely comments about images or aspects of their work that you enjoyed, you know, we have the chat to do that. And maybe when we get to the chat with Dawn, people might have reactions or comments or questions that they can drop into the chat as well. But let's kick off with our first reader. So our first one is going to be a bit of poetry. And this is by Susan Carberry. So Susan, go ahead.
Thank you, Brian. My first poem is called Mood Swings. We all have ups and downs as a normal part of life. In most of the population, they are barely noticeable. However, in a small percentage of people, they can be crippling. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, no problem.
Sorry. Mood swings. Dawn came. Summer morning burst of glory. Sun robed in saffron, wielding scepter of gold, rose to its zenith. I soared in the vortex. Enthroned above this glorious profusion, Eos and Elios painted the day and warmed the earth with blushing shades and diffusing rays. But sunset came too swiftly. Rose-pink tentacles gathering clouds into a twilight finale. Moon rose slowly above encroaching night. Elios had lost his corona to Selene's lunar veil. I too was sinking fast, plunging once more to the nadir of despair and howling at the moon. Thank you. My second poem is a light-hearted ballad of the time I was awarded a papal award, the Benemerenti, for my services to the Catholic Church, but it's light-hearted, so don't worry. The Ballad of the Benemerenti, or Why the Bishop Came to Tea. I woke this morning in a sweat, thinking of what lay ahead. A mass to celebrate a papal award. For me, so it was said. I must admit I had to knock on the priest's front door last night to ask if what I'd heard was true. And I passed out like a light as the priest went on to wish me well, and the bishop is coming to say Holy Mass and present the award to you on the Lord's Day for all the work you've done for him in the parish of St. Bowers. Your service over 20 years amounts to thousands of hours. We're grateful to you for serving us all here in the parish room, where you ran the show like an admin pro, and when locked down, on Zoom. What he said next caused me to shake and protest vehemently. The bishop wishes to meet with you, to thank you personally. The bishop said a beautiful mass, presented my medal and scroll, uttered a few kind words about my work, then preached to save my soul. When all was done, we came to my home, the priest, the bishop, and me. With pride, I proffered homemade cake and cup after cup of tea. After the meal, we sat and talked of faith and the church today, how those who work for God and Rome earn their benemerenti in gratitude for all that's done through the years for the Holy See. So there it is, the reason why the bishop came to tea. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sue. I'm sure we'll get some lovely plaudits in the chat there. There's some absolutely lovely rhymes and beautiful imagery in that last one. Fantastic. All right, well, we're going to move on next from poetry to prose. So our next reader is going to be Lee Ong. Lee, whenever you're ready, you can let us know what you're going to read and start.
Thanks, Brian. I'm going to read a piece called The Elephant Teapot. The elephant teapot that had belonged to Mother had been wrapped carefully in scented tissue paper, placed in a box and transported in her suitcase. The label said fine bone china, and the handle, or the ear, was delicate like an Indian elephant's. The spout, which was of course the trunk, was solid and upturned. The elephant was hand-painted in an array of bright colours: aquamarine, magenta, midnight blue, and a clementine orange, interspersed with a sunburst yellow. She never used it for tea, but kept it in the same way that Mother always had, in a display cabinet, admired and only ever brought out for dusting. That was until she'd had an offer of a job overseas. She'd sold her furniture and given away items which she'd always thought of as precious, until all that remained was the elephant. She had made a trip to her brother, who lived 100 miles away in a remote village in the northeast of England, not trusting the services of a courier. Although they hadn't seen each other for 10 years, with the only contact a text message on birthdays and the odd Christmas card, she felt certain that he was the only one that would understand, even though there was very little understanding between them. When they were growing up, people said they were like chalk and cheese. She looked like Mother, and he reminded them of the father that had abandoned them to start another life with his secretary. If she was honest with herself, which she rarely was, they didn't even like each other. She'd been glad when he moved so far away, and she knew that this was the reason why they were still in each other's lives. When he opened the door, she was struck by the fact that her little brother was so old. His hair was more salt than pepper, his forehead permanently furrowed, He smelt of coal tar soap and reminded her of the fat orangey yellow bars that Mother always brought from the market. She wanted to hand over the elephant teapot and leave, but couldn't find the words. He spoke in a voice that sounded gruff, asking her how she was, as if he saw her every weekend. He looked at her with his tortoiseshell-coloured eyes, and she wondered if he thought she had gotten old also. He offered her tea, and she'd said okay, but only if he had green tea. And while they were on the subject of tea, she'd given him Mother's elephant teapot. She'd unzipped her travelling case and carefully removed the box containing the elephant. He'd thanked her and taken the teapot with him to the kitchen. She heard the kettle boiling as she sat looking round his living room with all its browns and biscuity beiges. There were family photos of her with her brother and mother on the mantelpiece. She wasn't sure whether it was the air freshener, the furniture polish, or the lingering smell of food infused with spices, fried garlic and chili, but it smelt of home, and she felt the ache of longing for something that no longer existed. When he returned, he held a familiar floral plastic tray that she recognised as belonging to Mother, with 2 empty china cups and the elephant teapot sitting proudly in the middle. At first, she was confused, but then she realised that he'd made tea in her mother's precious elephant teapot, the one that they never used for tea. She realised that he didn't understand at all. He took the teapot by the delicate elephant ear and went to pour their tea very carefully into the teacups. She heard the crack first, followed by a crash, and then the splash of liquid. She managed to stifle a scream which came out as a short, sharp intake of breath. The tea seeped into the pile of the biscuit-coloured carpet, a camouflaged wet patch. The elephant teapot had lost the solid trunk, and her brother held the ear by 2 fingers. His mouth wide open, the shape of an O, he looked at her with wide eyes. She turned away from him, and reaching for the redundant suitcase, she muttered to herself about this being a mistake, wishing she had never come. As she closed the front door behind her, she thought she heard him say sorry. She didn't know whether he was apologising for the teapot, or whether it was about something else, something more important. But then she never did understand him. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lee. Lovely. I could really see that teapot and the scene. Well done. Yeah. Fantastic. All right, I'm looking on our list here, and I think our next reader is going to be Julie Warnan. So Julie, as I understand it, you're going to be reading some writing for children from the children's writing class.
Yes, well, I thought I would read 2, these are picture book stories, but they would rhyme. I wouldn't exactly call them poems, but they're rhymed stories. So shall I begin?
Yes, whenever you're ready.
Okay, so this one is called King Bunkerby. Tell me if there's trouble hearing me, okay? On an island bright in a bright blue sea lived a happy king, King Bunkerby. He had everything, had subjects, 3. He had everything but potato soup, and he wanted this. So he called his group of subjects 3, and he said, I look for the one of you who knows how to cook potato soup. Now the youth spoke up, and he said, Sire, I can make the soup, but we'll need to hire an assistant who can tend the fire. And the man stepped forth, and his beard was gray, saying, I've kept fires in my day, but who'll hold one and clear ashes away? And the maiden said, I can do all that, but I'll need someone to feed my cat. But there were no more. They were only 3. So they went away. Then King Bunkerby, whose appetite had grown and grown, took some onion, salt, and potatoes brown, and he made a soup. And he served it round, and it was delicious. On an island bright in a dungeon dark on the windy hill or in Central Park, I have learned one thing. You can learn it too. because you do yourself to get done. It's true.
Great.
Beautiful. Thank you, Julie.
Okay, do you guys want the other one?
Sure. I mean, you've made me hungry for potato soup, and now I'm wondering what's coming next.
Okay, well, this is called Marcia, Maria, and Mary Ann. So, Marcia, Maria, and Mary Ann went to school in a frying pan. This is how they made it go. Marcia twiddled the handle, so Maria banged on the bottom fast, and Mary cried, "Make way, we're coming fast." They sailed over telephone wires and trees. They played hide and seek with a playful breeze. They raced with an orange butterfly come to fly in the wide, wide sky. And when they saw their school below, Maria drummed on the bottom slow. Marcia twiddled the handle hard, and down they drifted toward the yard. The children and teachers came running up, waving and shouting, "Up, up, up, here's to Marcia, Maria, and Mary Ann." They did what just about nobody can. They came to school in a frying pan.
Brilliant. These are
How
amazing
fun.
imagery. Yes. Classic
Lovely.
children's rhymes. Thank you so much, Julie. Excellent. All right. We're moving right along. We have 3 more poets before the end of the break. And the first one of those is going to be John Ellis. So John, take it away from here.
Hi. So what this is called, it's called The Spanish Rooms. And what it's based on personal account, the newspaper reports of the Denmark Place fire, which was something that happened in August 1980. It's a not particularly well documented or well-known incident in London's history. So it's very much based on fact, this one is. I'll start. So The Spanish Rooms. Nobody deserved to die. This was murder. It didn't matter who they were. Nobody deserved to die because some people thought these people were important. Nobody deserved to die for someone's sister, daughter, brother. No one deserved to die. They belonged somewhere. No one deserved to die when the fire struck at speed. People died on the spot without having time to move an inch. Some were slumped at tables. Nobody deserved to die among the 7 who were at the bar, fallen as they stood with drinks clutched in their hands. Nobody deserved to die when the bottles stood without tops, the contents turned to steam. Only skulls indicated the presence of people. Nobody deserved to die for being in the Spanish Rooms. We had a jukebox and a bar. Everyone knew one another. Nobody deserved to die when you went up there and called yourself what you wanted, with or without a second name. Nobody deserved to die. If this was arson, it could have been the worst mass murder in British history, reported the Sunday Times. Nobody deserved to die. The Daily Mail judged it was a seedy drinking with a pill, not just for minority groups or retired prostitutes, all kinds of folk intent on slumming. Nobody deserved to die because these people felt at ease amongst the pimps, the lesbian prostitutes, screeching homosexual queens, hash dealers, and the drooping addicts of Soho. Nobody deserved to die. This was murder. It didn't matter who they were. Nobody deserved to die. There were scorch marks on the building, but even they faded over the years. Nobody deserved to die in a place where, when you walk around that corner, there are 37 souls walking up and down with you. That's it.
Thank you very much for that, John. I knew
John.
nothing of that event in history, and you evoked it very, very well with a haunting refrain. Thank you so much, John.
Thank you.
All right. We've had such variety of our next one is Sarah O'Connor. Sarah, you'll be reading a poem as well, I believe.
Yes, thanks, Brian. I have 2 poems to read tonight. The first poem is called Objects in Mirror Are Closer Than They Appear, in memory of an Irish summer. She calls me a grand soft day, and I wonder where she sees softness. Is it in my pillowy farrow and ball shaded ceiling, or my cold caress sheeting her face, both gradually and all of a sudden? Perhaps she sees absence as weakness, walking away, not fighting her blazing new beau for prominence. He still lights honeymoon green shoots in her eyes, picnics on the beach, slick muscles scantily clad. It will be years before she remembers my gentle dottled presence on rose-tinted glasses, long replaced with his harsh browning scars and thunderous outbursts. In this first flush of heat, he is welcomed as natural, and my cooling summer mist drifts into the rearview mirror. Daughters repeat the mistakes of their mothers. Be careful what you wish for. I spit bitterly into southwesterly forces as they pivot and pull me away from her for good. And the second poem I'm going to read tonight has a word of Irish in it, which I'll just translate. The she are the fairy folk, but rather than just Tinkerbell style fairies, in Ireland that covers everything from leprechauns to banshees to goblins. So this is Shockroan She, fairy straying. I know how to get there from here, I say, lying on my side in the mud, looking up at snatches of greying sky through bare-armed branches. This carpet of wet amber leaves, more thin sponge of cheap linoleum than a welcoming pile. I turn at the fallen tree, turn mud-splattered jumper inside out against the she, and yet rush-bordered lake remains determinedly on my left. That's not right. And neither is the squawk of lifting geese spreading their engines to form a squadron. Their light bellies make a lie of my location, telling me I have stood on a stray sod. No grave here of an unbaptized child, no fairy fort. The locals don't rest coffins on a bed of straw, so maybe I am just lost. Reverse jumper only succeeds to spread muck on t-shirt and jeans, no release. And the sandwich in my pocket makes an impotent amulet, being gluten-free. It's still day, not night, and there's no gorse for me to fight. How can my unbloodied hands find a route home? I still. For here is a peacock surely sent to follow through thicket and thin winding path. And I have circled South Norwood Country Park more times in these 2 years than decades round Hazel Hill. I find no new estates or playgrounds to negotiate on fresh tarred road. On-brand nomenclature bringing country to Norwood, contrary to home house lack of hazel boughs and flattened hills. And the bird does lead me, but only to another tree, one which has shed the familiar spiked cups. So on my knees, I use a rock to crack each nut, finding sun-scorched nothingness within, time and again. May a cat eat you, I toss defeated to the follying breeze, and may the devil eat the cat. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. What beautiful, evocative imagery and cadence. I think just incredible cadence, rhythm to those poems. And a great last line, may the devil eat the cat. All right, we have one more poet to read for us before the end of the first half, and that is Anna. Is that right, Anna? Is Anna with us?
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Oh, sorry, there you are, Anna. Here we go.
Thanks,
Let me
Brian.
spotlight you. All right, so Anna, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to share two poems I've developed during the 2 terms I've been a student with City Lit in classes with Megan Beach and Christina Dunhill. The first poem is called Inside on the Outside. Inside the holy city, she sipped wine for the first time and took the tour alone because ancient street builders forgot about wheelchair accessibility for her mother. When she cried out loud down the tour bus that the guide desecrated her under her dress, they all prayed to their hallowed laps and worshipped their sealed lips. That is how she understood she should laugh, especially when something felt like thorns ripping through tender groins from the inside. Much later on, she stood at the highest visibility viewpoint of a video call, naked except for the tan marks of a holiday's dedication, and giggled at herself, unsheathing eyes and unsealing mouths. For the first time, the congregation online liked her, as she was lead role in a mockumentary they had not seen yet. She religiously replied to all their fan mail. Even though her mother was dying by then, it felt more like home than she had ever known, until home was gone and her mother was gone. So she ate a boiled egg and round bread that stuck to the roof of her mouth, as their traditions said mourners should eat those things. But it made her choke when she tried to laugh. So she scraped the spit-soaked egg stink paste from her mouth and glued it to her skin on the outside. And the second poem is a short one, and it's called Big Truck. According to the rules of the road, it should be my right of way, but you, man, are in a big truck. Maybe I hesitated. Maybe I gave you the impression I was giving way to you. You do not hesitate, you push through, leaving me trapped. And now you're slowing down, your window creeping lower, your face sneering from your cabin above. Don't look so miserable. How about a smile, love? Because you deserve joy, and I owe you joy. I will smile as soon as you leave. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anna. Both poems, it seemed to me, very strongly about power relationships and justice, and that was powerful. Thank you. Well done to all our readers in the first half. We had 6 incredibly varied presentations, and there's going to be more in the second half. Before we hear more readers, we will take a short break. I think I have 7:31 right now, so let's take a 5-minute break if anybody needs to get some time away from the screen for a moment. And when we come back, I'll be leading a chat with Dawn King about the craft of playwriting, and then we'll have 6 more readers. Okay, so we'll see everybody in about 5 minutes time. Everybody hear me now? Yes?
Yes.
Thanks for letting me know that. Welcome back, everybody. We will kick off with the interview portion. And the person we're going to be chatting with is Dawn King. So hi, Dawn. Dawn and I both teach in the playwriting department. It's interesting to me, maybe an event like this with these kind of readings don't naturally always suit themselves to playwrights. So it's such a joy to represent playwriting in this event when there are so many poets and other kinds of writers. For those who don't know Dawn, I'm going to give a rundown of some of Dawn's work. So Dawn King is an award-winning writer working in theater, film, television, radio, and other forms, as we will hear. Dawn's work for the stage includes Foxfinder, which was originally produced by Papatango Theatre Company at the Finborough back in 2011, and then revived in a West End production at the Ambassadors in 2018. And Dawn won 1 million prizes for that, including the Royal National Theatre Foundation Playwriting Award, as well as the Papatango New Writing Competition 2011, and Most Promising Playwright in the Off West End Awards. She was also a finalist for the Susan Smith Blackburn Prize 2012 and the James Tate Black Drama Prize 2012. Her other work for the stage includes Brave New World at the Royal in Derngate, Ciphers, presented at the Bush Theatre, and Salt, a play for National Theatre Connections. And Dawn co-created the immersive rave Dystopia 987 for Manchester International Festival in 2019. So as you can see, completely all sorts of different modes of theatre writing. Dawn's short film, The Carmen Line, won 17 awards, including the BIFA, British Independent Film Award for Best Short, and was BAFTA nominated in 2014. I've saved off to the end the plays that Dawn's worked on most recently, because I think those will definitely kind of come up in our chat. I should also say that as well as teaching playwriting and screenwriting, teaching playwriting here at City Lit, Dawn also teaches at the National Theatre with the New Views program and at Central School of Speech and Drama, as well as elsewhere, working as a dramaturg and a script editor. So welcome, Dawn. It's nice to have the chance to chat with you.
Hi, nice to be here.
So I said I would save your recent work because it kind of goes into my first question. So everybody, these are 3 pieces of Dawn's that were all, I think, premiered last year, or at least premiered in the UK last year. So think about a year at working as a playwright where you could have 3 more different things than this. So Dawn's play, The Trials, had a sold-out English language run at the Donmar Warehouse. It had been previously performed in a German production at the Düsseldorfer Schauspielhaus. And that play, as I understand it, is a dystopian piece about a kind of future climate change courtroom. And it included actors who were young teenagers, sort of putting adults on trial. In the same year, Dawn's play, Addictive Beat, had an immersive production in a converted church in Southwark Park last September with Boundless Theatre. And that was a piece that included, it was kind of about club culture and raves, and had a score created by a DJ and composer, so completely different from the first one. And Dawn's radical reinterpretation of Chekhov's play, The Cherry Orchard, was put on again at the Deutsches Schauspielhaus in Hamburg last year, directed by Katie Mitchell, kind of one of the most well-known, amazing, and radical theater directors working in the world. So, Dawn, I guess my first question is, those 3 pieces, we've got an adaptation, we've got an immersive thing that has to do with music, we've got a dystopian kind of sci-fi piece that also includes young actors performing. When you're writing such different things, do you think that your process shifts and changes? And how does it shift and change based on working in all those different ways?
Yeah, I mean, every process is different, I suppose. And so of those of those 3 plays, The Trials is the most sort of classic play, in that I wrote a script, we workshopped it. It was initially produced in Germany, and then it was kind of workshopped again and was rehearsed and was on in London. And then Addictive Beat was a show that has a lot of music and movement in it. And so that show was, there was a text, and then I kind of did some workshops with director and some actors and music people. And then I worked on the script again, and then I took the script back into rehearsal, and then we kind of did quite a bit of wiggling in the first week of rehearsal. And then with the Kirschgarten, with the Katie Mitchell show, that was that was quite a different process, because there's actually not very much dialogue, like audible dialogue, left in the show. And so what I was doing was kind of responding to what Katie's provocation was, and then I kind of gave her like the text that she was kind of asking for, and then she was working with this video designer who's recorded all this video footage, and mostly what you see is video, is video, and then it's a big crazy piece of kind of like art theatre, basically. So they were all different, and it was a kind of pile up of work, and partly it was like that in the year because of COVID had delayed some of the shows, so it otherwise wouldn't have been like that. So it was like, oh, I'm having all of my Christmases all at the same time. Yeah, and I was quite tired by the end of the year.
I mean, I guess like it's interesting because I also, with the show that I've worked on most recently, it was a process of development where other artists, in the case of like sound designers and video designers, were giving massive inputs that were shaping and changing the text. And I guess it's interesting to me, like what you're doing when you're talking about Katie Mitchell giving you a provocation, and it ended up being something that was almost no dialogue and video, or something else where, you know, it's in an immersive club space and you're working with DJs and composers. Do you think that the Dawn of 6 or 7 years ago would have been as comfortable with that? Like, or did that Dawn kind of know more about the basics of writing a script? Like, how have you gained those skills of collaboration, or has that shifted and changed over time?
It's a good question. I mean, I think that I've done a few different things. So I did this big adaptation of Brave New World, the science fiction novel, and that show had music written for it by a kind of particular amazing music person, and there were some quite big kind of movement sequences in that show that were like quite major kind of like, you know, pieces that it took a long time to kind of rehearse, like this section of the show, because there were 10 actors, and I think that definitely helped. And I guess that doing the thing in Manchester that I did, where I got this phone call that was like, do you want to sort of be involved in this rave that we're making in Manchester, with Skepta is going to perform? And I was like, well, yeah. And I think that they'd come to me because if you type dystopian playwright into the internet, you kind of get to me really quickly. And so, you know, that kind of that sort of helped, that experience of like music. And so I think it's kind of built on itself, I suppose, but also things that I'm interested in as well.
Why are you so interested in dystopian themes, other than like the world at large seems to be dystopian?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why, really. It's like this is the dystopia that we live in, really. I don't think it can get much more dystopian. It can, obviously it can. I didn't mean that, you guys. Yeah. So I think that's why, but also because it's a good way of kind of having an imaginative space to play. You know, you say, well, it's not quite now, it's not quite here and now, I'm just going to kind of twist something, and then I can explore something.
Yeah. And explain for people who didn't see it, The Trials, because that feels like, in some ways, as you said, it's kind of like a standard, almost like a courtroom drama, but it's kind of imagining a world that's just past our world, that's just advanced in our world. Like, how did that idea come to you? Because there's so much bad plays about climate change.
Yeah.
I would say.
So that in the trials, there's it's set in a kind of future where there's a radical green government in charge, and ordinary people like us who are over a certain age are put on trial to see whether the way that they lived in the past was justifiable, given that there's been a climate emergency and that there's a lack of resources. And the jury are 12 teenagers. So the 12 teenagers hear 3 adult defendants talking about their lives, and then they have to deliberate and decide if these people are innocent or not. And the idea for that really came from me asking myself the question of whether in the future people would think that I had done enough. And so I'm defendant too in the play. I mean, you know, that my name isn't used, but like that's what defendant 2 is. It's me. And so that's kind of where it came from. And it was also there was a lot of things that I was trying to do with it, really. Yeah, so that's actually, I felt like all the dystopias that I had kind of previously been doing were kind of practice runs for the trials, because the trials is the most kind of like near and scary dystopia, because it's not very far away. So yeah.
And it's also like, I think, you know, it feels like you hooked onto something really, really playable, because I don't know, I've seen a lot of unsuccessful climate theater, but it feels like what that show is doing is taking like a classic drama format of kind of putting people on trial and weighing their guilt or innocence, and that is inherently dramatic, isn't it? But you're giving us all the thought experiment of sort of how would we be judged in our own behavior. It feels much more successful to me to trying to like depict rising sea levels and all kinds of other stuff that people have tried to do on stage.
Yeah.
There's a question come into the chat. I'm not sure if everybody can see it, but Julie is asking, Dawn, can we watch any of your work on YouTube or somewhere? Is there any of your work that's available to watch on video?
No. I mean, you can probably find some stuff if you do a search, but not anything official, unfortunately. But I mean, there are productions of the trials that there's 2 productions of the trials happening in the summer. There's one at there's like short runs. There's one at Birmingham Rep, and there's one at the Marlow Theatre in Canterbury. And there's also some productions happening in other countries. Although obviously for obvious reasons, I won't be flying to Australia to watch it there, because, you know, I already had to kind of have a fictional version of myself killed for my climate crimes in a play. So I don't want to like add to my guilt anymore.
And of course, people can read the scripts of most of these plays. I would imagine that's one way to access them. Dawn, I'm thinking, I know we haven't got too much time, so I'm thinking of like asking questions that may be interesting and applicable to some of the folks who are listening. And obviously, actually, if anyone wants to shout out any questions or reactions in the chat, please do. I was thinking, because we both teach playwriting to students at City Lit, and you know, I think we both have some really, really talented writers who make real progress and come up with amazing scripts. And I'm thinking about that leap that sometimes the students have to make from I'm working really a lot on my writing, and it's kind of reached a point where I've given all I can give sitting typing at the keyboard. And I think you and I have learned that so many discoveries about theater making come not just from the writer sitting alone by themselves, but from, you know, workshopping and hearing and getting inputs from people like DJs and directors and actors, whoever your other inputs might be. Like, I don't know if you could speak about the benefits of that, and maybe any just advice or tips you could give to City Lit students who are sort of at the place where they've written some scripts, but how can it's not how can you get it produced, it's kind of how can you get exciting new inputs from other people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the kind of advantages of poetry and prose, which is what we kind of mostly have here, is that it is possible to kind of literally read it out. And I could have come on here and like read a section of something out, but I'm not an actor, and it generally doesn't work that well when I read my own stuff. I think that it's obviously really important, but like a play is a sort of recipe for a cake, you know, and so what you want to try to do is to kind of get people to sort of engage with that, to see whether it works, like whether the cake is going to be any good. And I think so I've got 2 City Lit courses that are finishing this week. I had one finish last night, and I always say to them, you know, if you've been doing a course, then make sure that you stay in contact with people, and then you can read each other's scripts. And you want to, if you've written something, you know, first of all, you've written it, and the circle of people who know about it is really small. It's basically you, and so you want to kind of widen it out. I mean, if you've written something, whatever it is, you want other people to kind of know about it, and them to read it, and then to kind of talk to you about it. So you can do that with friends, you can do that with people that you've been on courses with. Then you can also look for kind of opportunities where, you know, there are various places where you can send things and they'll be read, you know, things like this where people get together on a Zoom and kind of read each other's projects or give each other feedback. And then once you feel like it's really, really ready, obviously then you start sending it into more official places and maybe getting feedback from those places too.
Yeah.
And then when you think it's really ready, that's when you start sending it in to competitions and stuff.
Yeah. And I would just sort of add on to that, like anecdotal things about some of the students in my class, and maybe some of yours as well, Dawn. I know like some of my students have organized those kind of groups for themselves, and in some cases maybe had connections to other people they knew who wanted to try out directing or wanted to try out acting, and that kind of just lifts everything to sort of the next stage. So yeah, I just encourage everybody, there is a limit to like what you can discover just from writing, especially if you want to be doing kind of a lot of more innovative theater kind of stuff, the kinds of things that Dawn's describing that are sort of breaking the form, breaking the barrier of just a standard play. So, you know, it doesn't always require, you know, the royal court saying, yes, we accept you to put you on stage. Even just going around to theater scratch nights or Zoom networks or whatever, if you get one person who is not a writer, but maybe is a director, or maybe is an actor looking for a role that you want to play, and bouncing off and feedback from them, that can just unlock your understanding. The thing about it being a recipe for a cake is a very apt metaphor. It's not just meant to sit on our laptops. I don't know if anybody else who's been listening has any questions or comments that they want to shoot to Dawn before we move on into some other readings. Please put them in the chat if you do.
Ryan, why don't you tell us about your upcoming show?
I can. Thank you, Dawn. That was a very brilliant plug. Everybody, I have got a show opening. Again, it was already on earlier in the year. The show's called Live to Tell. And it's going to open at the Camden People's Theatre next Tuesday, run for 2 weeks. And the big and exciting leap that happened in this play for me is that I perform in it as well as written it. So that is a huge leap. It's a play that is about queer history and HIV and Madonna as a pop icon, but it also includes me and kind of my own experience of living with HIV and using Madonna as a kind of symbol and antagonist. But the big thing for me has just been you write something and you get all these amazing inputs from, we have a brilliant sound designer, it includes some incredible video work. But then, you know, you work so hard, you're like, we did it for 2 weeks early in the year, 2 weeks again. And now I got to perform it every night. Oh my God, my knees are tired. I'm completely exhausted from having done it. But yeah, it's been a joy. And actually, while I was still developing the show, we did unpack it quite a bit in a short course that I do called Autobiographical Theater. So if there's anybody in the room who has an idea for a show that is based on their real life and want to explore it through that course, that's one that people might want to check out. I think it's in July. So yeah, if anybody's around London and looking for some theater in the next couple of weeks, next week and the week after, Camden People's Theatre, check it out. Dawn, do you have anything you want to plug that people can see?
No, I just at the moment I'm back in writing mode. So that incredible year of like 4 shows back to back, 2 in England, 2 in Germany. I think that's quite unusual. And what I have to do now is write loads of new stuff. So I'm just spending a lot of time in my house, basically writing.
Yeah, not as much fun as being in an immersive rave.
Not as much.
I'm just putting into the chat here because I think this maybe didn't get given to everybody, from Julie, one of our readers, who's saying there is a online Zoom theater performance that happens on Sunday evenings. Right there, you can see the details. I think Julie's been involved in that in the past. But thank you, Dawn, for that insight into the work of playwriting. I think unless anybody
thank you,
else...
Dawn. That was really good.
Great. So why don't we turn back to our readers? So our next poet is going to be Laura McKinnon. So here's Laura, and we will bring Laura up. And go ahead, Laura, if you want to tell us what you're going to be reading.
Yeah, so I'm going to be reading 2 poems. The first poem's title is Hay. So, Hay. Morning mutes my tongue that last night stained offered only chaos. Now my thumbs are damage control doves, texting for forgiveness for the night. Even though everything I said then was vital and obvious and true, and I know, you've heard it all before. But my 3 a.m. words are just rats in the undergrowth. They run in packs and have families and dark holes of their own. They communicate in dirt and worry about their pink tails. And they worry about their drinking too, because even though they're rats, they still have shadows. We resolve to pretend this never happened again. Leave my rats be and move upwards as they burrow and tumble over one another. Because the sky forgives me in gentle hues, and the clouds whisper not now noises to slow my hummingbird heart. And then the second poem is titled Cuffing Season. For anyone that doesn't know, cuffing season is the period of time, sort of late autumn to early spring, where if you're single, you might withdraw from dating and have a look through your phone in case there's anyone from your past that you have your eye on. So this is cuffing season. As the leaves brown and the coffee cups red, the texts begin to change from the summer's you up to I've been thinking about you. Do you remember that time? The temperature drops, pumpkins rot. The men have not found mates. Grasshoppers singing all summer. And now, wrapped in the promise of vanilla spice romance, the deciduous kind, carrying handfuls of forgiveness and forgetfulness, they curate a winter's promise. It's too late to harvest, to the grain stores, let's feast. The folly of lust, the fear of the cold, we settle for the season. Thanks.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Laura. I love the idea that when we get to the autumn, not only are the leaves changing, but the texts are changing as well in their character. Brilliant. Okay, our next writer is going to be sharing with us some prose, and this is Sue Oldfield. So Sue, let us know what you'll be sharing.
Hi, I'm reading an excerpt from Squiggle, which is my middle grade novel about Harry, who is desperate to fit into a new multicultural setting while encountering some otherworldly visitors. Chapter 9. By the next day, Harry's mind was riddling with all the things he had learned from Grandy and Mum, trying to work out what was true and how much it really mattered. His interest in his family was growing rapidly, along with the pride that he was part of it. He had thought plenty about the slow worm, which had started off the stories of the 2 WGs, although he had forgotten to do some research on slow worms for science that morning. Mrs. Singh had promised to do some research herself, and the students were also meant to do their own Googling. Now Harry was looking at Bashir in none too friendly a way. Bashir was skinny and scruffy, as if there were never quite enough money to go around at home. yet he had a very precise, posh voice. Harry always rolled his eyes when Bashir was the first to share what he called his amazing facts. Some of his facts were actually quite amazing, like that cows have 2 rows of eyelids to keep the sand out, or, weight for weight, a spider's silk is stronger than steel, or the first earthlings to orbit the moon were tortoises. But Harry didn't like him. Bashir was always the one with his hand up, often in order to tell on one of the other students. Harry glowered as he remembered being told off by Mrs. Singh for something she only noticed due to Bashir's beady eyes. Out of class, Bashir was generally by himself. Most of the other children must find him as irritating as he did, thought Harry. He just didn't fit in. Science finished and it was lunchtime. Harry, Ravi, Sanjay and Cooper gobbled down their packed lunches and then rushed over to the makeshift nature reserve to see what the slow worm was doing. How did you get here so quick? Sanjay straight away spotted Bashir on the other side of the barrier. Alone, as usual, he was tramping around in the long grass at the edge of the school field, looking for the slow worm. I just was not hungry. Bashir sounded distracted. He was holding out some leaves, but the slow worm didn't seem hungry either. It was nowhere to be seen. Harry was furious. Get out of there, you stinker, he shouted. You're destroying its habitat and you'll drive it away. And it's our slow worm. We saw it first. The boys were dumbstruck, and Bashir said nothing until he had climbed back over the tape. But his eyebrows were lowered and his mouth was pursed. Who are you calling names? He challenged in a low, menacing voice they'd never heard before. Stupid southerner. I've got as much right to see the slow worm as anyone. And I'm telling on you. Yeah, that'd be right, snarled Harry and charged at Bashir, knocking him over. For a long moment, Bashir stayed still in the awkward position in which he had landed. Sanjay and Cooper pulled back Harry from pushing him again, or worse. Ravi picked up Bashir's glasses and handed them to him. He was able to see tears in his outsider's eyes. But Bashir refused to meet Ravi's gaze, then hobbled off. Ravi turned to Harry, who was breathing heavily, but seemed to have the fight pulled back out of him. What were all that about? What do you mean? He had it coming to him. So perfect, always telling tales. He's a freak. He'll never fit in anywhere. The boys looked at each other, shocked. Cooper finally spoke. You're right, he's not like us. His family's really hard up. They came to England from Uganda when he was small, looking for a better life. They'd been driven out because this awful dictator bloke called Idi Amin said they weren't African enough to run their businesses. You see, racism crops up everywhere. Bashir's dark, darker than any of us, but he's not as dark as Idi Amin's Africans, or as light as you. But I'm not racist. I hardly notice the colour of anyone's skin. Then you hardly notice what people have gone through, broke in Sanjay with unusual spirit. My dad talks of how, when we first came here, they found graffiti painted on our door and even firebombs thrown at some of the other houses. The city council actually wrote to people back in India to tell them not to come to Leicester, saying there were no jobs, no schools and no housing. And that just weren't true. Bashir's dad came here because his family were here. He was a successful businessman in Uganda, but he had to just walk away from a whole line of dress shops he owned to come to Britain. And neither he nor his family had enough money to start up another business. And now I don't think he's got a job at all. Our landlord said he was a hard worker, but the clothes factory where he worked had to lay him off. He asked us to look out for Bashir. Great job I've done of that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sue. You really painted a whole social world with the interaction of these boys. It kind of makes, if that's chapter 9, I'm eager to hear the rest of the book. I hope we can read it sometime soon. Great, we're going to move on, and we've got all the remainder of our readers are poets. So the next one is going to be Nikki. So Nikki Regan, here we go. Let us know what your poem's going to be.
Okay, thank you. My poem's called Consent, and it's based on the experiences of some young people with whom I've worked. She's not in class again today. High on the adrenaline of alloy wheels and Gucci love, she's miles away in a tower block, draped around him like a shawl, as the lads brag nitrous oxide conquests and prop her up against the piss-soaked wall. Forcing her open, he thrusts into her hungrily. Then each one has her, spurred on by their brutal masculinity. Syrup syllables soothe her fears. His girl has done him proud. Vodka numbs the branded bruising and the ruby tears between her thighs. And the latest iPhone promises will airbrush the pain and buy her off again as she gags to pleasure their backseat fantasies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nikki. Obviously, a very strong, very forceful story, and as I can gather, about real experiences, but turned into very powerful poetry. Thank you. We are going to move on now to Sally Spears. Let's get Sally up there. So, Sally, why don't you introduce the work that you're going to be reading?
Evening, everyone. I'm going to read you 3 short poems. The first one's called Every Dog Has Its Day. The second one is Thank God There Is No Full Stop. And the third one is called Insomnia. Every dog has its day. A dog day afternoon on parkland trails. The air is frenzied, far from tranquil. There's more than one dog here that has 2 tails. Let go, a bitch on heat has caused the thrill. The owner, an indignant girl. The other hounds strain their leashes, howl and drool until, losing all restraint, they bound, surround her, try to mount the alluring pup. As a pack, the snarling owners round on the girl, they growl, "What's this? What's up? You must not bring a pooch in season in the park." But she does not roll over, she interrupts. "Call off the dogs," she almost seems to bark. "Because she's got her period, these males I see still have their balls." Her spiked remark, I think, is barking up the wrong tree. The race for her pampered pedigree is dog eat dog. There's no symbolics. The winner simply is the dog's bollocks. Thank God there is no full stop. You and me, a semicolon, my dot to your comma, together joining clauses in the long and complex sentence of our lives. You, a lone comma, curled in an oversized hospital chair, head drooping to your chest, and me, a disembodied dot. Insomnia. The chickens are in my brain again. They peck, scratch, squawk. It is the dead of night and a killer of sleep has come to stalk. Nothing thrilling like a silent swooping owl, as that lovely ethereal ghost would not disturb these fowl. My predator is more banal. A mangy urban fox on the prowl comes nightly, comes to millions, casts its shadow and disrupts the run. Tomorrow I'll be quite undone. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Sally. Fantastic wordplay that was both funny and evocative in all these different ways. Everything from dogs to punctuation and the chickens in our brain.
Yeah, very nice.
All right, yes. Okay, we're moving on. Our penultimate presenter, Laura Davies. Laura also has some poetry to share with us.
Hi there. I'm going to read two poems about a complicated mother-daughter relationship. The first one is called Baking. Let's make them together, she says, and lays out a golden brick of butter, a soft pack of flour, the chocolate chips from their hiding place. She says, let me just, and tightens the apron strings. She says, stir, and sugar subsides and butter blanches. She says, no, not like that. Shards ricochet from the bowl. She says, be careful. She says, oh my God. She says, be brave, bang it so the shell snaps in two. But the egg is a trembling grenade and you hesitate and shrapnel splats in the bowl. The yolk breaks, bleeds yellow. She ambushes the second egg, shows off, cracks it clean. She says, you mix it. She says, come on, give it some elbow grease. She says, harder, we don't have all day. She says, sift it with the baking powder, but the flour, mushrooms, and fallout speckles the counter, the apron, your shoes. She says they'll be ruined. She says, watch me, strong arms the wooden spoon. Now, she says, and you fire chocolate pellets into pliant batter. She says, not all of them. She says, don't eat any. She says, make little balls, and your hands are in the action, in the sweet, sticky mass, scooping, molding. She says, don't lick your fingers. She says, no, not like that. She says, those are way too big. She says, I'll have to do it then. And she rolls more ammunition. The second one is a short one called She Packed Her Marigolds. They lurk in her luggage, brazen canary flares, tucked between discreet delicates. Rubber and stale bleach hide the l'air du temps I seek in perfume stores on the days I miss her. Their white velvet lining will keep her hands soft, she claims, safe from cleaning sprays, dirt, hot water. It kills me, she thought to bring them, thought she would need a second skin. That's that.
Thank you so much for those, Laura. I don't think I've ever heard of baking in quite such military terms as that one before. It was
good.
full of tension. And that brings us to our last reader of the evening. So here we have Fahima Sahabdin. So Fahima, let us know what poems you're going to be reading.
Hi, so I've just got the one poem. And I wrote it for David Attenborough, as you will see. And I actually sent it to him and got a reply from him as well. So that was lovely. A conversation of for David Attenborough. In the final Africa wildlife episode, a fan followed David Attenborough, trying to start a conversation. He was an audacious beast with shiny black eyes and the hide of a dinosaur. He asked in a rather high tone. That was all he said, all that he could say. But the naturalist sank to his knees as if he'd been shot and was on all fours when he replied, as best he could. The baby rhinoceros considered the reply, then questioned again as if to be sure, for he was blind. This conversation went on for quite a while, as we, among 8 million spectators around the world, watched the 86-year-old British naturalist, armed with many awards and a knighthood, crawl after the newborn rhino on all fours, murmur as many as he demanded, call him an enchanting creature, behave as if he were besotted. We watched as if it was the greatest moment in the history of wildlife. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fahima. It's lovely to have a closing piece of work that so focuses on kind of non-verbal communication with all of those and wonderful. Thank you so much, Fahima. Thank you, everybody. Perhaps we could give final cheers and shout outs to the 12 writers who have shared their work with us. I have to say, as someone, I've been teaching at City Lit for more than 10 years now, but it's always with playwrights. And so it's really joyous to hear how many talented writers in other genres we have across the college, and to hear this kind of stuff, to get a little glimpse of everybody else's class is fantastic. So I want to say congratulations to everyone. And I hate to do it again, but I will just plug, since I have the platform to do it. If anybody does want to come see my play, if you're in London, it's called Live to Tell, and it opens next Tuesday for 2 weeks at Camden People's Theatre. But bravo, everyone. Hope you're signing up for more classes at City Lit. I'm sure if Dawn were still with us, she'd also second me in giving a shout out to the playwriting department if people want to branch out. And I mean, some of these poems had real drama in them. So if anybody
Yes,
wants
they
to,
did. Yes,
if anybody
they
wants
did.
to shift into some poetic drama, please consider joining our playwriting classes as well. Phyllis, is there any last announcements we need to make?
No announcements, just to say how great it is to hear everyone. I mean, I've taught the odd class, but I'm mainly doing the managing courses at the moment. So it's really just fun and lovely to see what people are actually doing on those courses, and such amazing stuff. And it's really, really inspiring to feel like what we're doing is helping people to do such great stuff. So yeah, really pleased.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks everybody. Congratulations. Well done. Enjoy your evening, enjoy your Easter, and I'm sure we'll see some of you at the college very soon or on Zoom. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.